Welcome back to X-Ray in the Morning. I'm Kira Lindenberg. I'm here with my friend Jamie Zangwell.
Hello.
I'm sorry I usurped you. Would you like to introduce yourself? Should we try that again?
Well, I was just about to, get ready for whatever you were about to say about me.
Did I do the thing where, I ordered for you at the restaurant, and she'll be having the rack of lamb?
Excuse me, husband. No, I'm kidding. I'm Jamie Zangwell, and I am a producer, behind-the-scenes person here, as well as host. And I'm happy to be here with Kira.
Jamie Zangwell is basically, she keeps this show running, and she's kind of
no big deal or anything.
Kind of awesome.
Thanks.
She does everything, Joey says.
I just love X-Ray a lot.
I know, I do too.
It's a good place. Thank you for listening, everyone. And we are about to get into some international news. Kira's going to start us off.
So in Thailand, signals shift in refugee policy, but fails to fulfill promise. Newly appointed head of immigration, Surache Hakparn. This is my lot in life. I always get the names that I can't pronounce, and I don't read them until I come up to them, and then I'm like, well, welcome everyone to
I think you pronounced it how I would have.
my episode of Can Kira Pronounce This Name Today? Anyway, the head of immigration in Thailand has pledged to reverse a long-running policy of returning asylum seekers. This announcement follows criticism of Thailand's policy over the attempted deportation of 18-year-old refugee Rahaf Mohammed back to an abusive family in Saudi Arabia. Mohammed's case was released into the care of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, following tweets that garnered international publicity for her case. However, inconsistencies in this pledge have already been being shown in the case of Hakim Al-Arabi. Hakim is a refugee from Bahrain with permanent residence in Australia. He was detained while in Bangkok on holiday and now forces deportation back to Bahrain, where he faces a real threat of torture upon his return. Thailand is currently processing a formal extradition request from Bahrain.
Ooh. Lots of immigration stuff happening.
Yeah.
Brexit stuff happening as well. Theresa May survives no confidence vote again. Wednesday, a day after her Brexit plan suffered the worst parliamentary defeat in modern British political history, UK Prime Minister Theresa May survived a motion of no confidence brought by Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn. May survived a vote of 325 to 306. Having already seen off one challenge from rebels in her own party, she's now defeated a motion from the opposition. Still, May is no closer to delivering on Brexit, with just 10 weeks left until the UK is scheduled to leave the European Union.
This might be more alarming. Well, I was about to say it might be more alarming than what's happening in this country, but I'm going to immediately revoke that statement. But it is kind of alarming.
Sorry.
Jamie's having a meltdown over here. She's actually crying because she's so sad about Brexit.
I'm embarrassed. My allergies are really bad right now. But yeah, Brexit is a sad situation, especially it's 10 weeks coming up.
It's an insane situation.
I mean, it's one of those that it's been popping up in the news every few days or so,
right.
And it's just interesting to track along. What was it? Someone is saying that they just have no idea what Brexit even is or means. I mean, it's very confusing. I don't think it was you.
I mean,
I'm looking at your face.
just based on my understanding of words and how words work. No, I know what Brexit is, but if you had to ask me, could I track the history of this Brexit decision and, that's a whole ball of wax.
Yeah,
but,
it's confusing.
I only have so much brain capacity to intake the news before my brain is like, yeah, we're going to shut down and watch Adventure Time now because we're all done with this.
Right. We've talked about it so much on the show, and that's our producer Joey said too, and it's still hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah, almost like what's happening in our country. In local news, the Multnomah County takes the first step towards Mental Health Resource Center, which that is actually some great news. On Thursday, county commissioners approved a resolution to move forward with negotiations over the conversion of a warehouse into a resource center. The building would be used for a mental health recovery center with transitional housing that would be open 24 hours. The center is intended to be different than the more emergency care-oriented Unity Center. The housing is designed to provide options for long-term treatment for people with behavioral health issues and provide long-term psychiatric care. Neil Rotman, Multnomah County's Interim Mental Health Division Deputy Director, speaking on the necessity of the Resource Center, said that, quote, "We're very focused on deinstitutionalization You're welcome for being able to pronounce that word.
Great one.
The issue is, does the housing exist for those people to move into? I feel like I could probably answer that question.
Yeah, because the housing problem in Portland.
Does housing exist for us to move into? Does
Right.
housing exist? Well, I guess housing exists if you count all of the $3,000 apartments that
Right.
are sitting empty. But that's a whole other story. And, we have whole segments on this show about housing, so we'll breeze past it.
Yeah, it's interesting though. But remember, the story says it takes the first step towards mental health resource center. So we need to keep tracking other steps that they are taking towards this. Because
but the fact that the time and effort and money is being spent on this,
Right.
I really appreciate that, because it shows that we are thinking about Portland as a community as opposed to, just a bunch of people who can pay rent.
Absolutely. I appreciate that too. And we need mental health resource more than anyone else.
Oh
Not
my
more than anyone, as
But
much
we
as anyone
really need
else.
it.
We really
Yeah.
need it. A flawed estimate forces Beaverton into school budget cuts. The Beaverton School District slashed about $12 million in the middle of an academic year. Beaverton Superintendent Don Grotting came up with 4 specific steps the district is taking to combat this problem. Limit using substitutes for non-classroom positions, which will save $2 million. Cut non-salary budgets by 20% for all schools and departments to save $2.6 million. Cut non-salary budgets related to curriculum and textbooks to save $2.6 million, and freeze hiring for non-classroom positions to save about $800,000. These actions implemented will help raise $8 million to help the school district, but they will still fall short. Many are applauding how quickly the Beaverton schools came together to solve the funding problem, because an audit on the Portland Public Schools revealed a very flawed budget.
I feel like we'll probably touch on that again later.
Yeah, that one shows up a lot too. The audit said for the Portland Public School that the budgets for the Beaverton School District, Seattle Public Schools, and other local governments such as Multnomah County illustrate stronger budget approaches that could help PPS manage its services more effectively. Beaverton's budget gap largely stems from flawed estimates district officials made last spring. See, I'd have to talk to Lillian about this, because, how do these estimates come to be? And then
I'm sure that there's an auditor.
Right. But I mean, they were so off this year, and it's causing to do so much backtracking.
And it's particularly unfortunate, because I know with school budgets, it's definitely, at least for the teachers that I know, school budgets are typically one of those, use all your money or next year you're going to have less kind of thing.
See.
And Portland schools and Oregon schools in general have really been underfunded. So this is a really unfortunate turn. So
Yeah.
and I would be very curious to know. So they're limiting substitutes for non-classroom positions. Does that mean that they're just not going to fill those positions?
I was wondering that too. And do you know exactly what non-classroom positions means?
It's just anybody who's not a teacher.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, difficult stuff happening though, especially in the school districts out here in Portland.
Well, and more talk about schools. This is, especially as somebody who is a science advocate, this is an extremely important story.
Yeah.
Clark County has confirmed 14 cases of measles. Washington health officials confirmed yesterday that there are 14 confirmed cases of measles and 3 suspected cases so far this year. All of the outbreaks have been among children. I can't imagine why.
Yeah.
The county published a long list of possible exposure sites on its website. They include medical clinics, churches, and elementary schools in Vancouver. Health officials say people may have also been exposed at the Portland International Airport and the nearby IKEA store. Well, those are small spots. No worries.
Just a
No
quick jump
worries
over
there.
into Oregon.
The county established a hotline related to the outbreak. The county wrote in a statement, quote, anyone who has questions about the public exposures should contact their call center. The number is 360-397-8021. The call center hours are 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. daily, including weekends. The full list of places and times of potential exposure is on the Clark County website and on the OPB website.
This is a very serious story. This is really scary.
Yes.
Can you die from measles?
I don't know. I imagine if you're immune compromised, you can die from pretty much any kind of a disease. But
This just opens up the whole vaccinating conversation, and then
it does, and I have so many feelings about it. But listen. if you're somebody who's on the fence about vaccinations, if your issue is that you think it causes autism, I can't. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to argue myself into the ground
so many levels
about something that has literally no evidence.
Right.
But if you're, and there's a lot of people in my family, like I was raised by hippies, so like there's quite a lot of people in my family and extended family who, they're opposed to vaccines, but it's because there's like all these mixed messages that come out, and to raise children, like it's difficult to know the right thing to do,
right?
And I acknowledge that,
right?
But I highly recommend, if you are on the fence about vaccines, do some research into like disease epidemics and just how do you say that word? Epidemiology?
Oh.
You
said epidemics,
that word.
Right?
Sure. Because the more I learn about that, the more it's, you think of vaccines and you think like, oh, well, I want to keep my child safe. But when you learn about the way that epidemics spread and the way the diseases spread, it's like, do you ever do that? Remember like when we were kids and there was that whole story about like, well, if you put a penny in the bank and then it turns into 2 pennies and then it turns into 4 pennies or whatever, and it like doubles every single day.
Yeah.
By the time you're 50, you'll have like $8 bazillion or whatever. But like that's how epidemics work. Like that's how measles spread.
Yeah.
So it's just a really interesting it's interesting just from a scientific point of view, but it's also interesting because you think you're not immunizing your child and you are solely impacting your child, but you are actually impacting the world.
That's why this story scares me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfortunate. It could start in Vancouver, you know? I mean, it like you said, it's just unfortunate.
This is also like the plot of lots of like Stephen King-based TV
Totally.
movies. Anyway,
but you're an interesting person to talk to about this with your science mind. Thank you very much. And we're back to wildfires, looping all the way back around.
I don't think I've done I don't think I have read the news on this station and not either talked about wildfires.
Trump.
Yeah, but that's not even. We might as well just change the name of our show to what ridiculous thing did Trump do today?
Right.
But we either talk about wildfires, police shootings.
Wait, there's more. I know this list.
Stuff about immigration. Yeah.
We have a lot of repeated stories, but wildfires, it's the part of the country we live in. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's true.
Along with various other cutbacks, the partial government shutdown has effectively halted planning and preparation for the 2019 wildfire season. The National Wildland Fire Training course in Redmond, Oregon has been canceled. Since nearly 1/3 of Washington land and half of all Oregon land is managed by the federal government, the lack of state funding has impeded the ability to support firefighters and strained our resources. 3 Pacific Northwest U.S. leaders are among the 12 who wrote letters imploring Trump to end the shutdown. Washington Public Lands Commissioner Hillary Franz stated that there isn't, quote, a plan B for managing and fighting wildland fire if the government remains shuttered through the fire season. And that's what we're starting to be like, if the government is shut down for this long, if we don't reopen, this will happen. And it's like, it's starting to get realer and realer.
Every day in every way, my theory that we have slipped into an alternate reality is confirmed.
Yeah. Remember when the world was going to end in 2012?
I do. We had a really great party. I have a friend who lives up in White Salmon, and we just like drank a lot of vodka and like celebrated. And then like midnight hit, and we were like, well, drink more vodka. It was a good party. Anyway,
nice.
This is, wildfires. So maybe there just won't be any wildfires in 2019 and then we don't need to train anybody. I hear thoughts and prayers are really good at keeping those contained. So
Kira, good one.
Sorry.
Kira.
Well, I've just now had enough coffee to be my real sarcastic self. So maybe we have time for like one more local story. So banned fish trap returns to Colombia. Close to half of the salmon in the Columbia River are hatchery salmon. The rest, however, are wild and likely protected under the Endangered Species Act. A struggle in Oregon and Washington has been to find an efficient way to catch more hatchery fish while letting the wild fish go. The Wild Fish Conservatory is advocating for the use of fish traps, which have been banned for years. Hatchery fish can be identified by their lack of a secondary or adipose fin. The fish traps would allow trap operators to pluck the hatchery fish manually from the river and allow the rest to swim free. Research shows that fish traps ensure 90% and above survival rates of fish that are released, far higher than the mortality rate of fish caught in the commercial gill nets. Fish traps were initially banned to prevent overfishing. Now, commercial gill net boats are also facing possible banishment. While advocates argue that the fish trap is more efficient, opponents argue that the low mortality rates of wild fish will still add up. This is going to have to be a real, weighing both sides. I don't know that there's going to be a perfect solution to this problem, but I appreciate that we're trying to find,
Yeah.
I love Oregon so much, and I love that we care about our wildlife.
Yeah. Do you do anything like this on Everything is Interesting? By the way, Kira has her own podcast, Everything is Interesting.
Which she'll be repping at PodCon this weekend.
Oh, yeah. And she's like a real sciencey person, so I like to put all my science questions on her. Not that, the animal kingdom is not.
Load them on my shoulders. It's great.
Do you guys ever talk about...
I just read that. I got really excited because the wild card story is scientists find new evidence of life beneath the Antarctic ice. So we'll get to fish later.
Okay.
A research team working on the subglacial Antarctic Lake Scientific Access SALSA project, led by Chief Scientist John Prishew, spent 2 months drilling thousands of feet under the Antarctic ice sheet, and samples collected from what is now called the subglacial Lake Mercer have provided evidence of microbial life. These newly discovered life forms are not known to exist anywhere else. The cores are expected to tell scientists more about the history of this region and how the nutrients buried in the sediments are feeding microbial life that lives in the environment devoid of sunlight. Extremophiles, we call them. Water found to be moving underneath the ice sheet is thought by the team to be further destabilize portions of the Antarctic ice sheet, contributing to the quickening pace of sea level rise. The SALSA project also provides teaching for the future pursuit of research in additional extreme environments, such as other places in our solar system. That's why this is so exciting, because they hope that there's some sort of link between microbes that can live under glacial ice and microbes that maybe live on
planets.
Mars or whatever.
I also love that they were able to find an acronym for themselves that created
that
salsa.
Was salsa. I know. I imagine them dancing, they're cha-chaing.
But it's very real. Subglacial Antarctic Lake Scientific Access, the SALSA project.
Yeah, they're smart on so many levels.
That's so funny. I was literally just wondering the other day, are there kinds of life in icebergs?
Dude, life lives everywhere. It really, and we don't have time, but one day we'll get into it. We'll get into meet us at the coffee shop. We'll talk all about it.
Well, I had fun with you this morning, Kira. Thanks for being with me.
Jamie, it's always a pleasure.
It is. We don't do this enough.
Oh, man.
And if you see me walking around Seattle this weekend, PodCon.
Yeah, you'll have to wear a big name tag that's I'm Jamie from XRAY.
I should have an XRAY shirt.
You totally should.
Yes.
That was News with Friends, brought to you by Morel Inc. Find out more at morelinc.biz. XRAY in the Morning is also supported by our presenting sponsor, Tom Dwyer Automotive. Find out more at tomdwyer.com. And of course, you're listening to XRAY, KXRY, Portland, and KQAC. HD3 Portland at 107.1 and 91.1 FM, streaming online everywhere at xray.fm. Stick around. We have a new episode of Oh My Dollar coming up in just a second. This is X-Ray, where radio is yours.
This show is supported